Hey folks, Bruce with Talking with the Experts, and I'm here with John Riley, and John's the founder and president of Gentle Response LLC. I had a chance to do a brief interview with John back in April 2017, and you can find that video on YouTube. Just do a search for Gentle Response infomercial. So John, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Great.
Cool.
Thanks for bringing me back and chatting with me again.
Awesome, awesome. For those who haven't heard of you and haven't seen the infomercial we made, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to create Gentle Response LLC.
Basically, I was a police officer in Grand Rapids for just under 20 years, almost 20 years, and saw a lot and came to realize early in my career that a lot of my career was actually talking to people. You know, despite all the flashing lights and sirens you see on shows on TV, I found myself actually talking to people. Counseling, encouraging, chastising, mediating, and de-escalating and defusing. And so I realized that my career was a lot more about people skills. I retired in 2015, and in February 2016 was asked to do a conflict de-escalation class for our church security. And it was while putting it together, it hit me like a ton of bricks that what I had learned and experienced through the years, it was something that I should try to pass on to a lot of people who actually don't have the background training and experience to deal with someone who's loud, rude, obnoxious, and in their face.
Sure.
A lot of people tend to say and do things that they don't realize might actually escalate a situation. Okay. And so I had some business cards made up, and here I am, almost going on 3 years and doing well. Yeah.
Very cool. So how did you come up with the name Gentle Response?
From the Bible, actually, Proverbs 15:1. Specifically in the Message version, the Message translation, a gentle response diffuses anger. Some of the other translations will have it worded a little bit differently. A soft voice, it turns away anger, so on. But the Message Bible, a gentle response diffuses anger, is something I could really relate to because I've seen it work. I've seen a gentle response diffuse anger. I know and can relate to that verse. I lived it. Used it.
Okay, so sounds basic.
Oh,
gentle
yeah.
and diffusing.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So I'm looking at an example of someone not knowing what they're saying or doing at the same time, how that may escalate a situation.
In a variety of ways. You know, the human animal, we're wired to fight, flight, or freeze, and so our default reaction and response to someone who gets loud and rude with us is to get defensive. We get riled up, and we tend to maybe raise our voice. And that, of course, is going to set something going sideways in a bad way. I myself have never seen a situation work itself out with two people yelling and screaming at each other. Another thing that some people will do, there are some people who are very touchy-feely. They feel compelled to lay a comforting hand on someone who's stressed and agitated and all that. They want to lay a comforting hand to console or just to have that human connection. Well, the problem is, if that person who's upset and stressed out is not ready to receive that touch, that could really send things off the rails, and I've seen that happen. Yeah, let's see. There's several other different things people could use. Body language. For example, having your arms crossed is normally a very comfortable body posture to take. However, depending on the situation, you standing there with your arms crossed may not send the message that you intend. You are going to come across looking indifferent, you don't care, cold. And so again, it's one of those things that if a person is not aware that they are doing it, they could be doing something like that could actually trigger someone else's defensive mechanism and just offend them that much more. You know, they're trying to share with you whatever their issue is, and you're standing there with your arms crossed.
Sure.
So,
now, one of the scenarios I remember we did was back in the video that we did back in 2017. You were a person who came into a building and you wouldn't leave.
Right.
And I tried to ask you to leave, and you became very obstinate.
Right.
You're very vocal. Tell us a little bit about some of the scenarios you mentioned. Is this something you do in all your trainings?
Absolutely, absolutely. I am a big believer of very realistic dynamic scenario training based on my experience in the Army. I was in the Army for 7 years as an infantry grunt. And, you know, we were in the field almost all the time, playing war games. And I will say that's why the U.S. military is the most awesome in the world, is because we do it over and over and over again. We become very good at it. So then as my years in the police force, not only were we doing scenario training relatively often, but we were out in the street living it. So it wasn't like we just went through one lecture presentation, did a couple scenarios, and then that was it. It was something that we critically had to be on top of for our career, for everybody's safety. I don't believe anyone can really learn something from just sitting through several hours of lecture presentations or watching how-to videos on YouTube. Take bowling, for example. You can read all the how-to manuals on how to bowl a ball, watch the how-to videos, sit through lectures by professionals. After all, for crying out loud, how difficult must it be to roll a ball down a 3-foot wide lane, 60 feet long, to a bunch of wooden pins already stacked up in a group for you? And just roll it down the lane, right? But for anyone who's actually picked up a bowling ball, you suddenly realize, wow, there's a lot more to it. And so same thing, you can read about how to hit a baseball, or listen to lectures and watch how-to videos how to hit a baseball. But until you step up to the plate, literally, and develop for yourself that sense of timing and speed of that ball closing that distance with you, and develop that muscle memory, it's all gonna be theory. And so I really believe that it's really critical, and when people start talking about conflict de-escalation, that they go through simulated situations.
Now, I know you have a team that you work with. Tell me a little bit about your
Right.
instructors.
My team consists of either former police officers I used to work with or current police officers. And again, the reason I use them is because, like me, they lived it. They know, number one, they know how to very realistically simulate a situation, someone who's loud and rude, obnoxious. Some of my team members are also firefighters, either retired or current. Again, because oftentimes they were dealing with situations with people, you know, for a little bit before the police arrive on scene. So they're very familiar with dealing with people. Other folks on my team are just people I know from church who are actually very good at actors and actresses. Some of them also have, just based on their life experience, a background in having had to deal with high-intensity, volatile situations with people. And so they're valuable to me to help do a scenario and then help critique a scenario.
Very cool. And you have female instructors as well?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Females, men and women handle situations with females very differently. It's just, I don't know, it's one of those psychological things deep down into the human animal in us. We just treat women differently. And unfortunately, in my experience, there are women who know that and will try to take advantage of that. So yeah, I definitely have female role players. When they're available, I have them involved. And it's a real eye-opener for some folks too, who've not had to experience a situation with a female who is very loud, rude, and obnoxious and in their face.
Sure.
You know.
So how do you do your scenarios?
What I like to do is, because I understand from my own experience, having gone through scenario training, I know that a vast majority of people don't like being called up to the front of the class to act out a scenario or a scene in front of their peers. All right? And what happens is people will develop this performance anxiety, and they don't handle the scenario as realistically as they would. So what I do is I have a main lecture presentation, and then my 4 instructor role players go to 4 different locations within reasonable walking distance of the main class, but everyone is out of sight and out of earshot of everybody, so no one is distracted by each other. And the class is broken down into smaller groups, and then the groups are broken down into teams of 2 or 3. So it's just going to be, for example, if you recall the training we went through here, it was just you and maybe one other person or 2 other people who went, and it's just you, 3 or 4 in that room acting out the scenario with one of my instructors. So that way people get involved into the moment a lot more realistically than they would if they knew there's about 30 people behind them watching them. So I try to keep it, you know, quote unquote one-on-one. And all the people who have gone through my training, they fill out the review forms, training review forms. I hardly ever not have one where someone did not comment how much they enjoyed the fact that the training was, the scenario was, you know, just them and the instructor, and they admit on the critique form, the review form, that they had some anxiety coming into training because they thought that's what was going to happen, because they're familiar that there are other companies that actually do training that way. They do lecture presentation, and then they'll call 1 or 2 or 3 students up to the front of the class and act out a scene or something, and, you know, they don't like that.
Right. You talked about the critique phase. What is that?
Okay, so this is very important. Just like anything in our life, beginning with us learning how to tie our shoes, we need positive affirmation. And so the value of doing scenarios with instructors, role players who are either current or former police officers, is the fact that after a 3-minute scenario, and believe me, the 3 minutes will feel like an eternity when you've got someone just being loud and rude in your face. We go into a critique phase, which is about 4 to 5 minutes long, where the instructor will point out what you did right and validate what you did right. Because again, we need positive affirmation of what we've done right. Everyone does something right, but a lot of times there's going to be things that you may be doing that you don't realize you're doing. You know, again, either folding your arms or like in one case, I had a person actually step up to my instructor, kind of close the gap. You know, you don't want to do that because you violate now their sense of space. But this person was not even aware he did that. It wasn't until I showed him the video that he realized that he in fact did that. But so anyway, that's the value of having a critique phase by former or current police officers or even the firefighters who've experienced dealing with volatile situations. You now get real-time feedback of what was done right, what could be tweaked, and that's not something you can get from just sitting through a lecture or watching a how-to video.
Right. It's interesting because in 2017, when we did that in April, when you did that, it was very realistic.
Yeah.
When you did the scenarios, and I can vouch for that. Tell our listeners how realistic are they?
It can be very realistic, and I customize the scenarios to the clients. So example, when we were doing churches, then those scenarios were based off of either actual incidences that churches have experienced, either at my church or other churches, or a potential situation. You know, for example, a lot of people raise their hands and they volunteer to be church security, but they don't realize that it's going to be more than checking locked doors and turning off lights in offices. How are you going to handle that situation where a lady comes in, she's lost custody of her kids or going through an ugly custodial dispute or whatever, and it boils over, and now she shows up at the nursery daycare wanting to see her kids, and she's upset. You know, how do you defuse and de-escalate that situation? So when I go to different clients, for example, we've also done training with state organizations. We simulate and recreate situations and scenarios for them. So churches, businesses, we even teach law enforcement, health services. All the scenarios are geared towards you, the client, and what you and your personnel have either experienced already or could potentially experience. Gotcha. So, yeah.
So what are all the things someone can get out of dynamic, realistic scenario training?
This is critical. Again, you are going to get, number one, stress inoculation. And what is stress inoculation? Basically, once you become, I guess, accustomed to dealing with a certain amount of adrenaline, it doesn't start to affect you as badly as it otherwise would. So stress inoculation. That way, the next time you suddenly find yourself in a confrontational situation with someone, you don't have what I call a vapor lock and freeze. We need you to be able to think straight and to be able to consider what you need to do and start doing it. So you're going to get stress inoculation. You're going to develop that muscle memory. That muscle memory is basically just having gone through the motions of dealing with that situation in a similar situation, so that one day, if and when you deal with that type of situation, back in the back of your brain, you've already gone through it. You've already developed you know, you have an idea of what you need to say, you have an idea of what you need to do. That way you're not basically caught like a deer with a deer in the headlight look where, what do I say, what do I do, you know? Because otherwise, someone who's not mentally, emotionally prepared and hasn't trained are more likely to either underreact, overreact, or do nothing at all. And any of those three options is not good. So stress inoculation, Muscle memory, you develop self-confidence, again, because you've been through it. And one of the things that I like to do when I go to clients is I do the scenarios in the area where that particular scenario may actually occur. For example, dealing with offices or HR where they have to let someone go, well, we would recreate that type of scenario in an office with the desk and the chairs and all that. So if and when one day they're letting someone go and it goes sideways in a bad way, they've already got that confidence. I've been here before. I handled it properly. I know what I need to do. I know what I need to say. On the other thing that you develop is a confidence in your teamwork, teammates or co-workers, because now you know, having gone through the training, you know what their stress level is. You know what their triggers are. You've developed a confidence level in knowing how they're going to respond. You know that one person might be a little bit weak when they're dealing with someone who's this loud or whatever, and so this is where we start developing this teamwork. So you develop that confidence in yourself, you develop that confidence in your team, in your coworkers, and again, another incredible value I think is priceless is the fact that you get real-time feedback on what you did correctly and what you could probably tweak next time.
Great.
You know.
So, where do you conduct your seminars?
We go all over. We spent 2 days with the Coral Gables Police Department in Florida. In March, we were in Ohio in April. I consistently get inquiries from out of state. Currently, what I do now is I go to churches or different businesses and conduct training at the client's location. What I also do is from quarterly, I make arrangements with a venue, whether it's a church or a school, where they have the room available, and I just advertise specifically in this case for church security. Smaller churches may not be able to bring my team and I in, and so this is an opportunity for them to sign up and send maybe 2 people, 3 people, and get them exposed to the training, and then they can go back and tell other people or share with people what they got out of it. So we're very versatile. Like I say, we travel out of state, and you know. So we prefer to go do training at a client's location. Again, it's all part of that developing that self-confidence when you're dealing with a situation in a room, in a hallway that you've already been through a simulated situation, you know, and kind of help people develop that home court advantage, that mentality. Otherwise, yeah, like I said, about quarterly, maybe more often coming up for 2019. I have workshops set up people can sign up for.
Okay, so how do people find out? Where you have a website? Or?
I do have a website, and that's actually how most of my clients have found me, just doing a search for conflict de-escalation training. I'm also on Eventbrite, which is a web page where people can register online. On my web page, under the events tab, I keep a running list of all my upcoming training so that people can keep track of that. And I also encourage people to sign up for my email newsletter, you know, my email list, so that I can every other month maybe shoot out an email just to remind people, hey, I've got a workshop coming up or whatever.
So what is your website?
It is gentle-response.com. So gentle-response.com, yeah.
Got it. Sounds good. And you have a Facebook page as well.
Oh, my word, yeah. Everything is so social media driven these days. I'm everywhere. I'm LinkedIn, Twitter.
Gentle Response.
Yeah, just type in Gentle Response, you'll find me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, awesome, John. Well, thanks so much for the interview.
Thank you.
And best success to you.
Thank you.
I'm Bruce with Talking with the Experts. You have a blessed day.